not probably the best use of your time or mine. But I am excited to have more guests on here. And today I'm excited because my guest today is somebody that I actually like. My family has known his family for like decades. And so it's cool to have somebody on that like I actually have like a good bit of context on. And I'm a big fan of this guy. So anyways, today, J-Mac Jonathan Mcginely is my guest today. Jonathan, thanks for being here.
Let's go, man. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for
Come
having
on.
me. It's so cool seeing
Absolutely.
what you're doing. Yeah,
You
I
too,
love
man.
what you're
I
doing.
think we probably both feel similar ways. It's super cool to see you just like doing a lot of things, like being outspoken about your faith and your journey and wanting to help other men like get to where they want to go. I love it. Fires me up. So,
Yeah,
anyways,
man. Back to you.
let's go. All right, man. I want to give you the microphone and kind of let you tell people like who is J Mac, who is Jonathan Mcginley, kind of what's your story.
Yeah, yeah. Well, obviously that could be a long answer or a short one, but
Hey,
we'll kind of dive into that a little bit. I mean, I grew up, like he said, I mean, our families have known each other for a while. So we have similar upbringings where like you're a pastor's kid, I'm a pastor's kid, our dads are friends.
yep.
They're, pastors in the same city for a long time. So I grew up a PK, grew up a pastor's kid, and I feel like a lot of times with PKs, a lot of times you go one or two ways. You either like say, enough of the church, I'm getting out of this thing because I've been forced to be here my whole life, or you
Yep.
like dive in and you're just serving like crazy and you're a huge part of the church. And I feel like that was a lot of my story. I started playing, drums in like junior high. So I got involved with worship teams and was, been playing music and stuff for a long time in church. Then, kind of helped with the youth ministry. Then I had helped start this conference thing for young adults and whatever when I was growing up. So I was like always in the church, man. It just has been a part of my story. Obviously times where you're like super in it, times where you're not quite as much in it. But yeah, I mean, I think who I am today, I got all the way through high school, college, got married when I was young, was 23, and was married for 5 years, went through a super tough kind of separation, divorce when I was 28. And at that point in my life, I was kind of just in cruise control, man. I was just coasting, job I didn't really like, getting up, doing the same thing, being a nice guy, serving people, loving people, but like didn't have any passion in my life, didn't have any direction, felt like I didn't have a whole lot of purpose. And then once I went through that super tough season, I feel like that's when God just kind of got a hold of me again. There was a lot of guys that had helped me through that season, mentors and friends. And we just started doing life together and pushing each other. And I just got this big passion to help guys not do what I just did, like not go through the motions, not coast, get a big vision for your life and go after it. And so after that, honestly, man, I just started getting into personal development a lot and then just sharing what I was learning with friends and then like holding them accountable and helping them set goals and whatever. And it just was natural. And I was like, I love this. And so I was like, man, maybe I can do this for a career. And so I got a life coaching certification through the John Maxwell Group. I got a personal training certification, a nutrition coaching certification.
Wow, let's go.
I just wanted to help guys, man. And so a couple years ago, quit my full-time job, launched a men's coaching business. Been doing that since. So there's the short of it.
That's right. I love it, man. I love it. It's so fun to like hear you say that because like I love when people, because I've gone through it myself and you have, it sounds like, right? Like a lot of times God allows you to just like get punched in the teeth by life, just kicked straight in the teeth, right? And but sometimes those are like the most beautiful blessings that we get because it's him allowing it's at least in my opinion, it's him allowing our lives to be shaken up a little bit. So he's like, come on, man, like I got you. Let's do this. Right? Is that how you kind of felt through all that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he definitely used that season. And I know a lot of times, like when I've told this story and I look back, I'm like, man, I wouldn't wish what I went through on anybody.
Sure.
But I also wouldn't change what I went through because it actually like grew me to be the man that I am now. It kind of was that kick in the butt to be like, hey, man, like you are kind of coasting. You're kind of playing small out of fear. You're not chasing the big things that I put in your heart. Like I just got comfortable just being decent, man, and not living up to my full potential and not even caring to pursue it necessarily.
Sure.
So I wouldn't say I was like rock bottom miserable person by any means. And
Sure.
and sometimes that's where we find ourselves, but a lot of times I think we find ourselves in that zone of like comfortable complacency.
Mm.
And I've heard this before. This guy Colin O'Brady, he's an awesome guy. I heard a podcast he was on, and he was explaining it as like life is like 1 through 10, scale of 1 through 10, and tens are like the highs of highs. Like this is when you launch that business and you get your first sale and you're pumped. It's when you get married. It's when you have your first kid. It's when you do some awesome physical accomplishment, like
Mm-hmm.
hiked a mountain. He talked about, when he hiked Everest, like that was a 10. Then we have the lows of lows, when it's tough times, when it's difficulties, when there's struggle and you're uncomfortable and you're failing over and over. And like some of these are the 10 or the ones, twos, and threes. And most of us chill in the fours, the fives, the sixes,
Oh,
which is
yeah.
that zone of comfortable complacency where we're like,
That's
man,
good.
I don't want to do anything that may open me up to those ones, twos, and threes like that. I can't let that happen. So I'm just going to
Oof.
chill here.
Yeah.
But if I just chill here, I'm not going to experience the eights, nines, and tens. And he said, like, you have to be able to open yourself up to the possibility of the ones, twos, and threes in order to experience the eights, nines, and tens. Because a lot of times those things only come through pain and struggle and getting uncomfortable and facing your fears and pushing
Bro.
through. And so I was like, man, I was living a lot in the fours, fives, and sixes over and over and over and over. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
after I got hit in the face, I was at the ones and twos. But then, like, when God brought me through it and how he brought me through it, and now
Mm.
having this like clear vision for my life and purpose and a reason to help guys, like that's an 8, 9, and 10, man, for me
Sure.
to have that clarity. So
Yeah.
that's what I say when I went through that. It was like, yeah, it sucked. I wouldn't want that for anybody. But
Sure.
also, yeah, now it's like, okay, I can see why I was not, super happy all the time, because I was just chilling in four, fives, and sixes.
Sure.
And so now I want to be a guy that's okay getting uncomfortable, being okay doing the hard things, because I want the eights, nines, and tens, man. I want everything that God's made me for.
Mm-hmm.
So
I love that. And that's the thing. It's like I love that you're saying that, because it's like you now have like the ability to like help other men be like. I was literally texting a guy last night that was on my team. He just got promoted. Like, and I was just like, look, man, like God's made you for a big, big purpose. Like you don't. I think people need people like us that have found that reality and been like, oh my gosh, God actually has huge plans for me if I let
yeah,
Him. Uh, and then I think we have the ability to take that to other people, because like you said, like we just get stuck there, and if no one, like if life or our situations or the Lord doesn't pull us out of it, or someone doesn't like grab us by the collar and be like, you were made for more,
yeah,
it's easy to get stuck there. How do you think you get, because you're doing this right, like you're coaching people, how do you
yep.
get them out of the 4 and 5 mentality?
Yeah, it's a good question. I keep trying to figure this out.
Sure.
That's kind of like the big journey in my life. But I think a lot of times, I mean, what you said is awesome, that you have to have people with you. I think that's one of the hardest things when you're stuck in like isolation zone, man. You don't have any friends, or if you do have friends, they're friends that uh, you don't have serious conversations with. I think,
Mm-hmm.
especially as guys, this is an easy one. And this was
Totally.
honestly where I was at in that season. I had a ton of friends. I would not say I was like in like all by myself, but when we were together, the conversation was always sports. Conversation was always,
Hmm.
work or whatever, which is fun. Like there's a time and a
Sure.
place for those. But it was all surface level, all surface level. And for me, I don't know if that was, I think that was probably me not wanting to kind of share some of these things that were happening in my life, because I was afraid
Sure.
to come off a certain way. And that's a whole nother conversation. But I think when you're isolated or when you're not having real conversations, that's where it gets dangerous, where I think
Hmm.
it's hard to pull yourself out. So having a good community is a huge one. Hiring a coach or a mentor or somebody who can just ask you the tough questions.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's, because I can't just come in and tell a guy what to do. Usually that doesn't work very well, because there's got to be some sort of internal motivation and buy-in.
Sure.
But just to say, hey, man, like, where do you want to be in 5 years? Hey, man, what are your dreams? What are your goals? Like, we don't get asked those questions very often.
Yep.
And a lot of those times, that's just like pulling you out of, we get stuck just in the day-to-day, the day-to-day, the day-to-day. Some sort of
100%.
moment to like pull you back and be like, oh, yeah, What is my life about? Where am I going? Are the decisions that I'm making today helping create a better future for me? Are
Yeah,
my habits that I'm doing currently, are they lending to something good, or are they destructive habits? Like, so I
totally.
would say it starts with community, starts with good questions. And then it starts with just like being willing to embrace a little bit of discomfort
Ooh,
to just
there it
start
is.
getting some momentum going. You have to be willing to embrace that first step,
Totally.
um, and start taking baby steps.
Yeah, I love that. You've mentioned it a few times, just the willingness to like do hard things and like be uncomfortable, experience the ones, right? Like I just think that's so important. All the best
Yeah.
things that have happened to me in my life were like really hard.
Yeah, for sure.
Like everything that forced me to grow. Even I had something recently last week. There was just something in my professional life did not go right. Like it went very sideways. And I was actually talking to my brother, Nate. He texted me and he was like, "Hey man, I'm sorry to hear that thing didn't work out, blah blah." And I'm like, honestly, man, I'm so happy it did. I'm very
Mm,
happy it did because it forced me to be like, what am I missing? What's the thing I need to focus on, right? But if it's all perspective, right? Like
yeah,
how do you help people get perspective though? Because I think the world just lacks perspective, especially in America, right? In the West, I just think we
for
lack
sure.
perspective at a higher level. Like, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah. Well, and a lot of times people don't even really think about that very often. Like, do I have a fixed
Right.
mindset or a growth mindset or what? Like, we don't really
Yeah.
think of those things very often. Um, but I was just gonna say, like, I mean, I think helping people actually reflect on their life and evaluate their life is a big
Hmm.
first step.
Interesting.
So, so I'm a like I said, I'm a John Maxwell certified coach, speaker,
Love him.
trainer. So I love his material, and he's got a book called The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. And there's two laws in here that I'm like, these are life changing, game changing laws. So the
Hmm.
first law of growth is the law of intentionality, which means that growth doesn't just happen.
Oh yeah.
So a lot of us assume we're just going to grow. So if I asked you the question, hey man, do you think you're going to have more finances in 10 years than you have now? Your answer is probably going to be yes. Hey,
Yes.
do you think your relationships are going to be better in 10 years than they are now?
Yes.
Yes. Like typically we're pretty optimistic about the future when we think about that. But then my follow-up question would be like, why do you actually think those things?
Ah.
And most people don't have necessarily like a good answer for that. It's
Sure.
it's more of just like a wish. It's like I hope this happens. I'm gonna hit the lottery kind of mindset where like something's gonna happen in my life that's gonna change things.
Dang.
But growth doesn't just happen. Like we have to have a plan for growth. So I have to like I can't just be chilling and assume I'm gonna be really good in my career. Like pick a specific thing. Like in my career, my growth plan right now, I'm focused on marketing.
Mm-hmm.
So if I don't have focused, intentional time on marketing, I'm not going to get better at it
Yeah.
necessarily, at least at the rate that I want to.
That's
So a
good.
lot of us assume in our lives that we're just going to grow. So you have to, like, we have to understand we can't just be chilling in this zone right here, 4, 5s, and 6, and assume in 10 years things are going to get better. I don't think that's smart thinking. So
Yeah.
that's the law of intentionality. We're like, growth doesn't just happen. You have to be intentional about growing. It's not accidental, it's purposeful. Let's figure out what we need to grow in and let's attack it. And that's a little
Yeah.
uncomfortable sometimes.
Totally.
And then the second one was the law of reflection. And this is a big one for me. And
Hmm.
this just says that you have to pause to allow growth to catch up to you. So we've all heard the quote that like experience is the best teacher, right?
Mm-hmm.
Experience is the best teacher. I think it's partially true, but we can all think of those things where people have been hit with the same thing over and over and over, and they never learn, and they never improve, and they never get better.
Sure.
So then that makes me ask, like, okay, is experience the best teacher? I would say, and this is
That's
what
a good
John
question.
Maxwell says and stuff too, is that evaluated
Hmm.
experience is the best teacher. You
That's
have
good.
to actually pause and like take a moment to pull the lessons out, to pull the wisdom out, to get the insights from that experience in order to keep going. Because I could have blown through that whole separation, that whole divorce, and been like blamed everybody, had the victim mentality, all this stuff, never
Mm-hmm.
taken time to figure out what I was doing to contribute. And I'd be in the same spot today that I was then if I didn't actually take the time to pause, pull the lessons, ask mentors what I'm not seeing, like So I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the thing that we don't do very often. At the end of every day, at the end of every week, whatever it is, taking time to be like, okay, how did this week go? What went well? What could have gone better? How do I actually pull the lessons? That is a
Sure.
huge thing if you want to start growing, those two things.
That was fantastic. That was great. Shout out to John Maxwell. You just did him justice.
He's the
That's
GOAT,
so
man.
funny.
Yeah.
It's so funny you say that, man, because like I've realized recently that like those two things you mentioned actually were things that I was struggling with, and I just
Mm,
didn't even realize it. It's so funny. I'm like having all these epiphanies recently. It's almost like God wanted you to tell me that, um, because like yesterday I sat down and I spent hours just planning for like Q2, like
yeah.
personally, professionally, because I realized in Q1 I didn't do that, and then like I said, I had this thing go sideways, and I was like, well, yeah, I didn't have a plan. Of course, it went
Yeah.
sideways. I've always like I think you're right. That's like so interesting. I'm about to ask you a question that really intrigues me. I I've realized that what you said about intentionality. I've always had this massive belief in myself. I'm like, I'm
Hmm.
just gonna change the world. How? I don't know, but I'm
I don't
gonna
know.
do it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and I know it. Like, I feel it in me. I know God put something in me, and I think God put
I love
something in
that.
you too, right? Like,
Hmm.
we know
Yep.
it, but without the actual action on my end,
Yeah.
uh, it falls short, right? And so that's so funny because I'm just having all these epiphanies this year to where I'm
Yeah.
connecting the dots of like, what am I missing? I'm like, it's a lot of that. It's a lot of just intentionality and not just belief that the future is going to be great. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
but how? That's so wild. And then reflecting too, right? Like I've realized I've believed the lie that just more experience, just fail faster, fail more. But I don't always slow down to be like, what do I need to tweak? What am I missing?
Yeah.
So that's huge. Okay, so this is what I want to ask you. I was literally talking to a guy last night about this. I'm realizing that I think, and I'm curious your thoughts, I think the most successful people are people that are actually able to build these systems and these frameworks
Hmm.
and then combine it with the belief and just never quit. And eventually, over a long enough time horizon, like they're going to win. If they have the right system and the right framework and they execute consistently, they'll win.
Yeah.
And it sounds simple, but it's like, for whatever reason, it's just starting to click in my brain of like, oh, that's the formula, right?
Yeah.
Like you're always like, what's the key to success? And it's like, oh, well, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. I'm like, it's really just like good systems and frameworks and plans, right? Executed consistently long enough. What do you think, though? I'm just like, my brain is exploding.
Yeah. Well, I love that, and I would agree with you. Because I always say, there's a difference between good intentions and intentionality. A lot of us have
Ah,
good intentions, but
sure.
intentions are just without action, without a game plan, without a system, are just wishes.
Dang,
And
that's
a lot
good.
of us have those. We have
Yeah,
like, I don't think anyone comes to me and goes, "Man, I want to be a horrible father."
sure.
It's like, no, your intentions are good. You want to be a good dad, like you want
Yeah,
to be a good husband, you want to be a good friend. Typically, those are our intentions, but that's not always the result. So then there's some sort of gap between there of like my intentions and what I'm actually getting are not consistent. So something in there
sure.
is systematically breaking down. So I think within that is structures and habits and disciplines that you need to develop. Like for me, I tell people this all the time. I don't think I'm that intentional of a person,
Hmm.
like just naturally.
Really?
And which seems weird. Like I am because I care about being intentional and because I've set up my life in a way that allows me to be more intentional in my life. So
Hmm.
this is what I mean by that. Without any of my systems, without any of the proactivity and the planning and the thinking and the designing of my life, just naturally, if I wake up and go through the day, I'm going to be more reactive
Mm,
than proactive.
sure.
And so, like, that's just how it is, man. I'll wake up, I'll be tired. You just kind of stumble into your first thing. You just kind of, you look at email and all of a sudden you're just in reaction mode all day long. That's how my life would go.
Yeah.
But so I'm like, man, I need to make sure I have designed my life in a way that helps me be more intentional and that helps me, do the things that I know I need to do on a consistent basis. So there is a lot of the design aspect there. And I
Hmm.
think the biggest switch in my head has been just asking myself, am I being reactive or proactive? Reactive or proactive? Think of the difference of these two things, man. I get up in the morning. my alarm clock is across the room. So I have to stand up and I have to go turn it off. Then I go and I drink a glass of water and I get in the Word for 15, 20 minutes. I go to the gym. My food is packed the night before. So then I come home from the gym, I get in the shower, I go to work. All my healthy food is packed. I don't look at emails for the first couple hours. I knock out my most difficult task first. I have set times in the day where I can check email. Like, think of that. That's
Yeah,
like a designed life that's very proactive. Okay,
totally.
now think of this. I wake up, I haven't thought through the day the night before. I hit my snooze, 3, 4 different times. Now it's 10 minutes before I have to be to work and I'm getting out, I'm scrambling. I don't have time to grab a breakfast. I just throw on whatever. I get in there, so I haven't eaten anything healthy, haven't drank any water, get to work. Emails is the first thing I hop on. Everybody's got all these requests. I answer those all day. Don't do anything that I was hoping to do.
Yep,
It's funny because we can all relate to that. I've had a ton of those days. I
totally.
still have some of those days. But that's the difference, man, between being proactive and reactive. And I think that's been the biggest game changer in my life is like, I need to make sure I'm going into each day in proactive mode. Taking time the night before to reflect on the day. How can I get better? Planning out the next day, knowing my schedule, knowing the things I need to get done, making sure they're blocked in, they're on my calendar. So some people have these 3-hour morning routines. It doesn't have to be like that.
Right.
It could be 15 minutes, but whatever it is to just make sure like I'm attacking today with intentionality and purpose. And
Right.
this is the system that I've designed to help me do it.
That's really good. I love that. A lot of stuff you're saying is like all the stuff that I'm like catching up to in life, right? Like the
Well, no
past
one
year or
teaches us
two.
these things, man. Yeah.
That's the thing, man. Like it's not that,
So,
like you said, it's not that no one wants to do it. We just don't. The information isn't given to people, right? We're teaching them. No offense, but it's the reality. We're teaching them math and science and all this for years and years and years, but we forget to be like,
yeah.
hey, also like be intentional with your life. Like
Yeah.
block
Exactly.
your time.
Yeah.
Run a
So
calendar.
yeah, exactly. I didn't necessarily know any better. And, I
Me
thought I
neither.
was doing a good job. And then
I did
all
too.
of a sudden you're like, oh, there's a lot more out there that
Yeah.
I realize I'm being reactive in the world. And that makes sense why I'm feeling
Right.
passive and why I'm feeling like I'm not living with purpose and passion
Yeah.
because I'm
Same.
reacting to everything. Yeah.
Me too. Me too. But it's like I think we're both in this awareness. We're living now in an awareness of our lack of awareness, right? I'm aware that I
Yeah.
lack awareness, so I have to
Yeah.
build structures around me to just keep me going. I heard it. Ed Milet, of course, right?
Mm-hmm.
He said something recently. I'll butcher it, but something about like systems and habits and disciplines and all that. He's like that's like paving the highway for your life, so that you can just show up and go fast down the highway. Right?
Yeah.
Like if you don't have those things, you don't have a road to travel on. I thought that
Yeah.
was a really good analogy. Okay, I want to move into, now that we're talking about intentionality, I want you to talk about intentional man and like what's the vision? Paint the picture. I got your planner. It's fantastic. I want to know like what's all the vision of all these different components, because you got a podcast, you got products, you have services, you have coaching,
Yep.
title, and I think you have events too. Like
Yeah.
give us the vision for intentional man, like the business.
Yeah, man. I love that. So, I mean, I'm just excited about what's going on. And I think everything that we've been talking about today is why I created this in the first place. Because I want to take good guys with good intentions and actually provide systems and resources and coaching and like accountability in a community that helps them be great. Like that's the simple of it, man. I want to help guys that I know are good dudes, that I know have good intentions, but are just by themselves, don't have a game plan, don't have people encouraging them, helping them throw, wood on the fire. It's hard to do things when we're alone. It's hard to do things when we don't have some guidance. It's hard to do things when we don't have somebody that's asking you good questions. And so I was like, man, I want to create a system for guys where you can be in this environment of growth, an environment of consistent growth is what I wanted to create. So at first I was just doing one-on-one coaching, which I love, just, like this, one-on-one over Zoom, helping a guy get from where he is to where he wants to go. So, and I love that aspect of it. It's so much fun. But sometimes that's not that accessible at certain price points, or it's, I have finite time. I can't take on everybody. So I wanted to also create a membership that's a lot cheaper, more accessible, where guys can kind of get into this environment of growth. So that's the first thing that I offer is a Intentional Man subscription membership.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're in Northern Colorado, I do an event the first Wednesday of every month. It's a member event. It's, it's networking, there's training, it's fun. It's just guys getting together, encouraging each other. And then beyond that, there's a whole online portal where I upload content every month. There's a live webinar every month.
Really?
Any of the resources I have, goal templates, life assessments, that's all available for you. So that's kind of the membership, and everybody's in this rhythm of setting 12-week goals. And I can get in more into why 12 weeks, but we all set 12-week goals. So the entire community is doing on this rhythm. So we're all about to kick off March 31st for quarter 2. Yep, everyone's getting these 12-week goals set up. And I'm sending out an email every Monday, a video going, hey, guys, we're in week 3. Like, let's keep at it. Let's get it. These are the challenges that usually come in week 3. Let's be aware of these, things like that. So that's what I wanted to create is an environment where guys have consistent content and resources, encouragement, motivation. And then within that membership, you can be involved in a growth group, which means you're just paired up with 2 or 3 other guys and you meet for like 20 minutes a week real quick. And there's a set template of like, this is what I said I was going to do last week. Here's what I did. And then here's what I'm going to do this upcoming week. Hold me accountable. So those things are rocking. So pretty much right now I have, the membership and the one-on-one. I have a 12-week one-on-one coaching program that helps you get clarity on your long-term vision and then helps you develop 6 habits of intentionality to put into your life on a daily basis. So that's kind of what I have now. And then I'm developing some courses and things right now that I'll be releasing shortly. But that's what Intentional Man is real quick.
I love it. That's huge. It's like giving men like the missing piece, right? The missing piece that I think, like you said, a lot of people are just missing. Not to any lack of character and integrity, just not having the right information. I think like, I don't know what you think about this. This is what I found, right? Like having been on my own little personal development journey the past few years, I'm like, there's just so much information out there, right? Like do this, this is the secret. It's this routine. It's just like so cloudy. And so that's why when I hear you say that, I'm like, man, that's actually so needed. People just need you to take it all and kind of consolidate it down for them and be like, here's the foundations.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's why people will pay money for this type of stuff, is because it takes it all and it says, hey, I've built it for you. Just plug yourself into this thing, right? Like plug yourself into my matrix and you'll get what you need. But I love it. I think, like you said, it's accountability, right? Like I've just realized so much, and I think you too, us men, we just need other men, right? Like we need men that we can be vulnerable with, that can hold us accountable and that can encourage us. Because like sometimes I think as men, we don't want to encourage other men, right? Like we don't like, hey man, like I see so much in you, I believe in you, you're gonna change the world, right? It's like I'm the top dog, right? Like there's like this arrogance that we feel, I don't know what it is, where we don't want to over compliment the other guys because we're in competition with them. And I'm like, I don't think we are. I just don't think that's the case. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think so either. No, I totally agree. And I always want to kind of have that abundance mentality versus scarcity mentality. I think sometimes when we have that, it's, a scarcity mentality is like, there's not enough out there where if this guy's successful, that I can also be successful. Right. Like we have to compete, especially even with like other coaches. I'm like, man, I hope you crush it. And I hope you get a ton of other clients, because we need, there's a lot of people that need help and I can't help them all. So I'm always quick to help, because I'm like, dude, we're out here to serve people. Yep. But I think that's a big mindset that I always want to have is, this mentality where can I inspire and equip this guy to do something great? And if he surpasses me, then that's amazing. And I'm a part of that story. And that doesn't mean that I'm less or I'm a failure compared to him. It's like, I just want to have that mindset of like, let's encourage. And I heard a quote that it's just been really resonating with me the last couple months. I honestly don't even know where this came from. It may have been an Ed Milet podcast. I don't remember. I think it was a guest on a show, but said, like, when you walk into a room, seek to be the most interested person in the room instead of the most interesting person in the room. And I was like, what a cool mindset shift. Because a lot of times you come in and you're like, how do I get the attention? How do I impress these people? Da, da, da. No, I want my mindset to come in and be like, how do I like see these people and encourage them? And when
That's
they
so
leave a
good.
conversation with me, they're like, wow, that guy was awesome because he cared about me. And I'm so fired up to go pursue everything I want to pursue. Like, I
Yep.
would way rather have that with somebody leaving a conversation with me fired up to go be everything God's called him to be, instead of them being like, oh, that dude, like, wow, he's doing a lot right now. Like,
He's so
that's
cool.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, that's great, but I don't care about that. And like, I
Yeah.
know my personal mission is to inspire and equip men to overcome passivity and live a life of generational significance. So if that's my mission
Oof.
to help
That's
people
good.
overcome passivity, I want to go into each conversation being like, how do I do that?
Yeah.
And I can't do that if I'm just talking about myself the whole time. I need to be helping people and
Sure.
be the most interested person. Be curious, man. Be ask questions.
Yeah.
Like, if we all did that, it would be so much better.
I love that. It goes back. It's the same word. It's intentionality, right? Like
It's intentionality.
to help men not be passive, you have to intentionally show them what it looks like to not be.
Yeah.
Right? Like we can't just tell people. I have a whole soapbox I'm not going to go on. Just about like in the church too. I think a lot of times we just want to yell and scream and maybe not even yell and scream, but we just want to give people more information and tell them the things they need to do differently. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what we really need to do is we need to live better and differently and then show them what we're talking about, not just talk about it, right? And guilty as charged. I a lot of times want to give everybody all the right answers of you need to do this differently, you need to do this differently, talk differently like this, here's the things you should do. But I'm like, wait a minute, I need to actually just focus on am I doing those things?
Yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah.
let me show them. And that's my other question for you. Like don't you think it's really just a form of discipleship?
Absolutely. I mean,
Everything you're talking about.
yeah, for sure. Well, for sure. Yeah. It's like, that's why I, view it. Sometimes I have to sit back and I'll be like, this is crazy. I got to do this as a job because this should be
Sure.
just who I am, what I do for, just in my life. But I think what you were alluding at is like people learn way more when it's caught and not taught.
Right.
So, and there's a combination. Obviously, like I
Sure.
teach and I love that, but if they can't see it, a lot of times it falls on deaf ears. Goes one ear, goes in one ear, goes out the other. So definitely modeling it is a big thing, and it's a big thing for me, honestly, to like live with integrity and stuff. Is to I have to practice what I teach. The downside of that is you put a lot of pressure on yourself to be perfect, and that's been a
Sure.
thing that I've struggled with in the past. So I'm like
Me too.
always trying to find this balance of leading by example, but also leading by example of failure sometimes,
Yeah,
and being
that's
willing
huge.
to like say, guys, I'm on this intentionality journey too. Like, by no means do I have this all figured out. I just have seen that it's changed my life. And so I'm pursuing it, and I want to learn and grow and just come do it with me. You're going to see me make mistakes, but I'm committed to getting better and learning from them and just pursuing this. So I think that's a mindset too, is, when you're trying to model and you're trying to show people follow authenticity. They don't follow
True.
fake. And I think we're pretty good at sniffing out what's true, like what's real and what's fake these days, just because we see so much on social media and everything of
It's
like,
crazy.
you're like, I don't think that guy's legit.
Yeah.
People are always kind of looking for that. Who is authentic? Who's being real? And so that's been a huge thing that God's taught me and has been a struggle for me in the past. Being a PK and growing up, being in front of people, being in ministry, temptation is I got to have it all together for people to respect me. And then I've realized the more that I'm actually like genuine, honest, share failings, am relatable, that's actually when people respect me way more, which is counter to what we usually think.
100%.
But that's a huge piece of like modeling the way is also modeling the fact that you're never going to be perfect. And this is a journey of growth, and we're just on it together.
I love that you said that because that's something I think it's huge. And again, that's another realization I'm having recently. You're just spitting fire at me today because I'm just realizing like me specifically and a lot of other men, I think we're so caught up in being perfect and it's all about performance.
Yeah.
We need to be executing. We need to be leaders. We need to be leaders in our families, with our bodies, with our health, right? Like we need to be doing the right things, but also like the flip side of that, the shadow side, I guess, of that personal development, the intentionality is like perfection, right? I'm not good enough until I XYZ, until I achieve A and B. So I love that you said that. Just the vulnerability piece is so key. I actually want to tell you, I have this thing here where you were talking about, guys that are going to potentially pass you because of what you've equipped them with, and
Yeah.
not having an ego about it. I have this sign, you can't see it, but it says leadership is we make way for the people who push past us. That's what
Mm,
leadership is on this poster.
yeah.
So I look at that a lot because I'm like, it keeps me grounded. Of like, my job as a leader is to help the people that I'm leading go past me.
Yeah.
It's like what our dads would love for us, right? I think our dads
Yeah.
would both probably say they're really proud that they've tried to help us push past them, right? Like that's the whole point.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it would be a waste if everything you're learning and everything that you've experienced and you're growing in, like, just stopped with you. I just think that would be such a waste if all
Right.
this that I just held in and I could have used it to help somebody and see them, and especially, man, like, God's given each of us unlimited potential. I really believe that, and God's given each of us a purpose and a mission. And if I was to,
Mm-hmm.
like, stifle that in somebody because of some insecure ego on my part, like, that would feel horrible to me.
Sure.
To be like, man, I was a barrier to what this guy could have done because I was selfish and wanted to look better than him. Man, I don't want to. I don't want to face God for
Yeah.
that one, man. I want to be
Right.
like, yeah, God, I helped unlock this in him. Like, what a way better story than I stifled this. I unlocked this for him. So there's one question that I think all of us as men have to answer.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, where am I finding my validation?
Oof.
Where am I finding my validation? And it's a big
Yeah.
question, and it's a deep question. But this is such a huge thing because typically a lot of times, and I don't want to make any blanket statements, but a lot of times our validation as men, what we typically turn to is performance. Am I doing
Yep.
these things? If I achieve, if I accomplish these things, then people are going to validate me. That's how I get my worth.
Yep.
Sometimes we can run to girls for that. Are girls giving me the validation? There's all
Totally.
these places that we look for it. And man, just think about this. If I'm getting my validation in achievement, if I'm getting my validation in my performance, then I'm going to be way less likely to help you achieve. Because if you surpass me, that means that I'm less of a man because
Oh.
all my validation is in my achievement.
Mm-hmm.
And so to come from that place, like, you have to be secure in who you are in order to help other people. Like, you have to find validation. For me, I'm a man of faith. I don't know where you are if you're listening to this, but for me, like, my validation is in Jesus alone. And the
Mm-hmm.
fact that he loves me, he made me, that no matter what I do, that I'm a son of God. Like, coming from that place, man, like, then I can actually, like, fully pour out, because I'm like, if I fail, I'm good, God loves me.
Yep.
If I achieve, I'm good, God loves me. If I help this guy and he surpasses me, amazing, because God created him to do that. Like, we have to answer that question, and it's a hard one, and it takes
Yeah.
time to dig into sometimes, but, like, you have to know where your identity and validation come from, because so many of those things pour out from there. So when you're talking about apathetic men, typically what I see in this, if you're getting validation from other people or your achievements or whatever, we typically go two ways. We either, like, become that crazy, like, I'm gonna high achiever that just blows through anyone and everyone to get it done, and isn't, I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
do whatever it takes to go be successful, because then people will validate me. And so we have that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Sure.
then on the other side, we have a lot of guys who are scared, like, if I step out and I fail, then people are going to see me for who I really am. So I'm going to hide
Mm-hmm.
then in passivity. I'm going to hide in this zone where I'm just, like, coasting through and I'm not really making mistakes, because then no one's going to actually, like, I'm not going to be exposed ever,
Yep.
because I'm just kind of in this zone. So I think a lot
Yeah.
of times we go two ways. Either we're hiding in passivity, or we're, like, going crazy, charging forward, trying to achieve, and nothing's ever enough. And man, those are two dangerous places to be in. I've found myself in
Mm-hmm.
both places. It's easy to fall into either. But that's a key component, man. When I work with guys, it's like, we have to address this issue, because if you never figure out this part of it, a lot of times, man, you may have a good season, then you're gonna fall right back to it.
Sure.
Whatever you're finding validation in.
Yeah. That's so interesting you say that. I've been reading Wild at Heart. Have you
Yeah,
read Wild at Heart?
yeah, yeah.
So
Our
good.
group has actually just finished going through that.
Oh,
Well,
really?
yeah. So our
It's so
the
good.
men's group that I lead, yeah, our church, we just did it.
He's just talking about that, right? Identity, like the wounds, like
For sure.
who are we, right? Like what were we made to do as men and specific individuals? God's put something on all of us, but through the journey, like you get hurt and the enemy lies to you and wounds, and
Yeah,
you forget who you're supposed to be. You know, I think it
absolutely.
happens to everybody. But that makes what you're doing 10 times more important, because the need is not like, yeah, there's, find your niche. There's probably a few guys that need it. It's like,
Yeah,
no, your
yeah.
total addressable market is all men. It's
Yeah.
every man, like it's a
Yeah.
big cohort of humans that need what you're doing. So anyways, man, well, hey,
Yeah.
before we wrap it up, I would love to hear maybe a few things, like, right, if I'm a guy listening and I'm hearing
Yeah.
this and I'm like, man, this guy is speaking to me, right? Like, I've been kind of lost. I know I'm made for greatness. I don't know what to do though, or kind of how to get my head on straight and start moving towards it. What are some,
Yes.
like, maybe first, second, third steps? Right, you can't give everybody the 15-step playbook to greatness,
Yeah.
today, right? Like, what if they were like, okay, what are a few things over the next
Hmm.
week or two that I can just do to start getting on the right track?
Yep. Yeah. Great question. So again, I would start with number one. Look at your community. Look at your environment. Is
Mm,
always a good one to start in. It's an easier one to kind of take a look at. Do I have anyone in my life right now that I can just talk to openly, and just be fully, authentically myself? If you don't, then that's something to start looking for. Um, but I think that's danger zone. If you
mm,
find yourself right now where you're like, I know I haven't had a real conversation with another person in a long time, or I don't feel like I have any friends, or I feel like I'm doing this all by myself. That's just question number one. Then, I mean, it's hard to find that. So I'm not saying you can easily just go find that, but like
sure.
that's something that's big to identify and to start pursuing that. And for me, sometimes when it was like, okay, how am I getting myself in a community of growth? If you don't necessarily have it, then just start committing to listening and reading and things that help you. That
Hmm.
can be your environment for a tiny season, like just to
Sure.
get you going until you find some actual people. Um, but I would assess your environment, and then I would just ask, what am I doing in my life that's reactive, and how can I start to make it proactive?
That's good.
Because it's a good question. Just like, all right, in my health right now, am I reactive or am I proactive? In my career, am I reactive or proactive? Relationships, reactive, proactive, and identify those things. So again, we talked about reflection. This is going to take a little time,
Mm,
but it doesn't have
yeah.
to take a ton of time. Sit down for 30 minutes and just think. That could be step one. Take 30 minutes this week and just like actually reflect on your life. Where am I at? What are the habits that are serving me? What are the ones that are not? And
Hmm.
then just pick one or two to work on and develop them. A lot of times, I would just give this warning. You come from a podcast like this, you're really motivated, you're inspired, you want to make all these changes. We try to make way too many at once, and you don't
Totally.
make any of them. So pick the one or two. If I asked you this in 3 months, if you could start doing something now that you're not doing that would make the biggest impact in your life in 3 months, what would it be?
Mm.
Most people have the answer to that question. What is the one thing that would make the biggest impact? Narrow in on that, and then just commit to taking, just start chunking away at it. So that would be great. And then, yeah, I would just say, I mean, planning for me has been a huge thing. That's why I
Mm.
came out with that planner. That thing forces you to reflect and forces you to think through your days. So it can be the Intentional Man Planner, it can be any of them. But I would just say somehow where you're actually thinking ahead to your day and like telling your time where to go instead of you showing up and just going through the day, I think is just a huge step.
Sure.
That has changed my life. A weekly planning session on a Sunday, and then some sort of daily routine of just, and it literally can take 2 minutes. Just get in some sort of routine of like stopping and thinking through your day. These are the things I need to do. Here's the two things with that.
Hmm.
What do you want to accomplish? What do you want to actually do? But then also ask yourself, what's the man that I want to be? Who do I want to
Ooh.
be in these situations? How do I want to show up? So this is game-changing stuff right here. If you have a meeting, instead of just waltzing into the meeting, just whatever, what if you took a minute before to be like, how can I show up in this meeting at my best? What would that look like? How can I come in and be the most interested person in the room, so the most interesting? If I don't ask myself those questions and pause, I'm going to just go in there and just whatever happens whatever happens.
Me
So
too.
that's been a game changer for me, is like actually throughout the day thinking ahead to these scenarios and being like, who do I want to be in this situation? So that's part of the daily planning too, is like actually the actions and the steps and the things you want to accomplish, but also who do you want to be when you come home to your wife?
Yeah.
Who do you want to be? Do you want to just show up and turn the TV on and do that? Or do you want to like think through, how do I be the best husband in this situation? And that is game changing.
Yeah. I love it. That's a perfect spot to end that question of like, everything that we said over the past 45 minutes, an hour, boils down a lot to a lot of that of like, who do you want to be?
Yeah.
Right? Like a lot of this stuff, the systems and the frameworks and the habits and the intentional man planners and the cohorts, it's all to figure out, who are you supposed to be?
Yeah.
Wow.
Our lives are writing a story, man. The actions, the thoughts, the things that we do on a daily basis are writing the story of our lives. And I want to get to the end of my life and be proud of that story.
Come on.
And the only way to do that is to have daily intentionality.
100%. Nailed it. If you're listening right now, just know that Jonathan and I believe in you, and we both believe that God has a large purpose for your life. You have to catch a vision, though. You have to catch the vision. But there's things to help. Jonathan, where can people find you if they want to know more about Intentional Man, if they just want to click up with you and maybe hop on a call, see what you can help them with? Where do they find you?
Yeah, exactly. So it's intentionalman.co is the website, intentionalman.co. So you can go there. You can contact me that way, and then also I'm on, all the social, on social media. Instagram is where I'm most active. It's just at Jonathan Mcginely 1. Feel free to message me on there. That's totally fine. Reach out through the website. There's a free trial on the website where you can get some free course material and things like that. And then the Intentional Man Planner, if you're looking for some daily system that just helps bring a little structure to your life, is on Amazon. All you have to do is search Intentional Man Planner. It should pop up. But yeah, intentionalman.co.
Intentionalman.co. I'm going to put all the stuff that he just said in the notes below. So if you want to get the Intentional Man Planner, if you want to sign up for his course, if you just want to connect with him, it'll all be below. Jonathan, thanks for making the time, man. You fire me up, dude. I love this conversation. Thanks for having it. I learned probably more than I can even imagine right now. Like I said, you said some stuff for me that, like, honestly, like I needed to hear. So I appreciate you, man.
Oh man, what an honor to be here, bro. I love what you're doing, and
thanks, bro.
Just if you're listening to this, Kyle's the real deal. So just
thanks,
appreciate you, man.
Awesome. Hey, it's been another episode of Inside the Mirror. Come back next week. We'll be chatting more. See ya.